She was called a courtesan, a sinner, unworthy of power, but she would become one of the most influential women in history. Her name was Theodora. And this is the story of how a girl from the slums of Constantinople rose to rule the Byzantine Empire. The first half of the 6th century AD, the Byzantine Empire is in its golden age. The most powerful man in the world sits on the throne of Constantinople. His name, Emperor Justinian. While his commanders launch campaigns to the east and the west, he himself is focused on reforms that will shape world history. Justinian rules between war and peace, chaos and order. History will never forget his name. But behind this powerful image stands a woman, one of the most controversial figures in Byzantine history, his wife, Theodora. Her story is unlike anything you'd expect from an empress. The year 500 AD, Constantinople. A child is born in the poorest quarters of the city. Her name, Theodora. Her father, Acacius, is a bear trainer for the Greens faction at the Hippodrome races. Her mother is a dancer and an actress. This is not a noble family. This is not a family with power or wealth. This is a family struggling to survive, and things are about to get much worse. When Theodora is still young, her father falls ill. Within weeks, he's gone, dead, leaving behind a wife and 3 daughters with no income, no protection, no future. The Greens faction, her father's employer, has already replaced him. They want nothing to do with his widow or his children. Desperate, Theodora's mother remarries, hoping her new husband will provide for the family. But the man is unemployed, useless. If things continue this way, they will starve. They need work, fast. Help comes from an unexpected place, the Blues, the Greens' bitter rivals. Theodora's stepfather is hired as a bear trainer for the Blues faction, and her mother pushes her daughters onto the stage. But in ancient Rome and in Byzantium, being an actress is not respectable work. It's considered degrading, shameful. Actors are viewed in the same category as slaves and courtesans. If you're a free citizen and you become an actor, you lose your citizenship rights. You lose your freedom of thought. Worse still, someone can kill you without being held accountable in court. In Theodora's time, this view hasn't changed. According to the historian Procopius in his book Secret History, after her father's death, Theodora begins performing in shows with her sisters. At first, it's just dancing, entertainment, but over time, the performances become more obscene, more explicit. She doesn't just perform on stage, she works behind the scenes too, using her body to survive. Her beauty is undeniable, her charm, magnetic. With her graceful dances and captivating presence, she enchants everyone, from the lower classes to the elites. But not everyone admires her. Some people see her on the street and step aside. They refuse to touch her because they believe that even accidentally brushing against her would stain their souls, their clothes, their honor. Now, we should approach these stories with skepticism. Many historians believe Procopius wrote Secret History with one goal in mind: to destroy Theodora's reputation. But whether the stories are true or exaggerated, one thing is certain. This life is suffocating her. She's intelligent, talented, ambitious. This lifestyle isn't enough for a woman like her. It will never be enough. She needs to find a way out before it's too late. At 20 years old, opportunity knocks. A diplomat named Hesebulus is appointed governor of North Africa, and he's captivated by Theodora. She's young, she's beautiful, and she sees a chance to escape. She takes it. She leaves Constantinople with Hesebulus, hoping for a new life, a better life. But it doesn't last. Shortly after they arrive in North Africa, Hesebulus throws her out. Just like that. No explanation, no money, nothing. Now she's stranded, alone, in a foreign land. She begins the long, desperate journey back to Constantinople. Hungry, thirsty, with no shelter. Once again, She's forced to sell her body just to survive. But something happens along the way. Something that will change everything. As Theodora makes her way through Egypt and Syria, she stops in cities like Alexandria and Antioch. And in these cities, she meets people who will alter the course of her life. Influential figures, patriarchs, clergy. She has long conversations with them, deep conversations, about faith, about meaning, about the divine. And slowly, she begins to change. She adopts monophysitism, a Christian belief that the divine and human nature of Jesus Christ are united in one essence, in one body. She leaves her old life behind. She learns manners, etiquette. She acquires new skills. She spends most of her time reading books, working hard to improve herself. By the time she arrives back in Constantinople in 522 AD, she is no longer the same woman who left. She's composed, educated, self-aware. She's determined never to return to the stage, never to work in brothels again. Instead, she spends her time working with wool, earning an honest living. She devotes herself to spiritual matters, to prayer, to reflection. She lives a spiritual life. She tries to live quietly, away from the public eye. But fate has other plans. One day, a man sees her, a powerful man, Justinian, nephew of Emperor Justin, heir to the throne, and he falls for her. Instantly, love at first sight, he wants to marry her, to make her his wife, to unite his life with hers. For Theodora, this is more than love. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Justinian is the future emperor, and if she marries him, she will rise higher than she ever dreamed possible. She accepts his proposal, and she cannot remain indifferent to his great love. But there's a problem, a big one. 200 years earlier, Emperor Constantine passed a law. Government officials are forbidden from marrying actresses. And Justinian isn't just any official. He's the consul, the sole heir to the throne. His position means this law applies to him as well. There's another issue too. Theodora follows monophysitism, but Rome adheres to diophysite Christianity, a belief that Jesus has two separate natures, divine and human. Her faith contradicts the official doctrine of the empire. In short, Theodora's monophysitism goes against the Christianity practiced in Rome. Emperor Justin's wife, Euphemia, is firmly opposed to the marriage for this reason as well. She declares that she will never approve of this marriage as long as she lives, citing both Theodora's beliefs and Rome's strict laws. And for years, it doesn't happen. The marriage cannot take place until Euphemia dies in 524. Theodora and Justinian wait, hoping, planning. Then, in 524, Euphemia dies. With Euphemia gone, the couple's hopes are rekindled. Justinian, determined to marry Theodora, tries to convince his uncle to repeal the law preventing this marriage after his aunt's death. At first, Justin hesitates. In truth, Emperor Justin hadn't really been opposed to the marriage. He had only pretended to oppose it to avoid conflict with Euphemia. But now that his wife is dead, he's free to act as he wishes. Finally, unable to withstand Justinian's relentless insistence any longer, Justin caves. He repeals the law that stood in the way of the couple's happiness. Immediately afterward, in 524 AD, he enacts a new law. According to this law, actresses can marry outside their class, if the emperor approves. The only obstacle to Theodora and Justinian's happiness is removed, and the couple marries in a magnificent ceremony in 525. 3 years later, in 528, Emperor Justin dies, and Justinian becomes the new emperor of the Byzantine Empire. He's now the most powerful man in the world. This position creates a great change, not only in Justinian's life, but also in Theodora's. Since childhood, Theodora had performed on stage to make a living. She had been belittled and despised by everyone. But now, she has reached the highest position a woman can attain in the world. She's now the Byzantine Empress. Although she is sometimes ashamed of her past, Theodora never makes any effort to hide it. In fact, she even brings her illegitimate daughter, whose father's identity is not certain, to live with her in the palace. Frankly, Justinian doesn't seem to mind this situation either. Still, at every opportunity, there are those who want to remind her of where she came from, of what she used to be. At this point, the image Theodora projects as an empress comes to the forefront. Just as it is today, appearances and the impressions they created were of vital importance back then. And Theodora knows this very well. She wears purple robes, worn only by royalty. She drapes herself in dazzling gold and sparkling jewels. These are always on her to remind everyone of her power. When receiving members of the empire, foreign ambassadors, and important figures of high rank, she also applies certain protocols to remind them of her authority. Aside from exceptions, she usually makes visitors wait for hours before granting them an audience. Those who want to see her only as the young and beautiful wife of an aging emperor are often quite uncomfortable being humbled by the status she holds, because according to some, Theodora has gone far beyond these labels. She has surpassed the usual position of a companion wife. Behind the scenes, she has practically begun to rule the empire. She's actively involved in state administration, and she often has a say in decisions that are made, because she has the competence to do so. She has spent most of her time reading books and has put great effort into improving herself. In this way, she constantly supports her husband's powerful position. But the shadow of the past continues to hover around Theodora throughout her life. Whether in whispered conversations in dark corners or in openly made statements, nothing escapes the Empress's notice. Yet, Theodora's refusal to ever deny what is said about her past means that she is, in effect, defying the hostile attacks made against her. As a woman, she had been forced to make too many sacrifices to survive. She had been humiliated for a long time. Perhaps she had been forced to live a life she didn't want, and in the end, she had withdrawn into seclusion. After that, by meeting Justinian, she had suddenly risen to a position she could never have imagined. Now, power is in her hands, and she wants to use this power in memory of the old Theodora, who had once been defeated in a man's world. While Justinian transforms the empire with a series of reforms during his reign, Theodora begins taking tremendous steps regarding women's rights by using her current position. In 528, she enacts her first major reform. She introduces the death penalty for the crimes of kidnapping and rape, placing all women, from the lower to the upper classes, under protection. In 534 and 535, she enacts a series of laws making it a crime to force women into prostitution. She also passes laws protecting women's rights in matters of divorce and property division, and she prohibits the killing of women who commit adultery. Throughout all of this, Justinian has always supported Theodora and approved of her views. At the same time, in historical records, we can also find clues that Theodora is a self-absorbed and despotic empress. She can dismiss officials she can't control. She can force people around her into marriages against their will. It is also believed that she played a role in the death of a Gothic queen she saw as a rival. While dealing with such matters, Justinian is preoccupied with new territories to conquer and construction projects to increase the splendor of Constantinople. He's an ambitious, innovative emperor who doesn't hesitate to roll up his sleeves. He often neglects rest and eating. Some nights he sleeps only 1 hour. He wants to make the capital, Constantinople, the most magnificent city on earth. But to do this, he needs an enormous source of income, and he needs to obtain this source as soon as possible. The first measure he implements is to increase the taxes collected from the people. But this creates great dissatisfaction in the empire. Grumbling begins in every corner of Constantinople, including the palace. As unrest begins to grow, Justinian turns to the loyalty of the Blues Party, which holds an important place in Byzantine politics, to support him. The hippodrome races held in Rome are not just shows. Each group participating in the races actually represents a political view. These are divided into groups such as the Greens, Blues, Reds, and Whites. Emperors support one of these groups and openly show which group they back. The group Justinian supports is the Blues, but the Blues are not a reliable anchor point for the empire to lean on. The Blues are ambitious and armed. This makes them a group constantly involved in dirty work. For the sake of their own interests, they ignore the suffering of the people. The emperor's desire to make Constantinople a more magnificent place means nothing to the Blues. Yes, Justinian has drawn the Blues to his side in order to implement his own policies, but the Blues' loyalty to the empire will not last long. The two biggest rival groups in Eastern Roman politics are the Blues and the Greens, and the conflict between them continues into Justinian's time. In January 532, this conflict turns into a revolt that brings the empire to the brink of destruction. The governor of Constantinople arrests and imprisons a group consisting of both Greens and Blues. All of them are accused of murder. The punishment for this is clear. They will be executed. Finally, during the races held at the Hippodrome, both groups revolt. Their targets are Justinian and his magnificent city of Constantinople. Enraged and seeking revenge, the rebels suddenly begin to turn the city upside down. City officials are being massacred. Buildings are set on fire. The Hagia Sophia, the marketplaces, the Forum of Constantine, the palace surroundings, and hundreds of homes are engulfed in flames. The frenzied rebels demand that the administration hand over 2 officials to carry out their executions. But Justinian rejects this demand. The rebels, not getting what they want, become even more enraged. Unable to suppress the uprising, Justinian, Theodora, and the top military command lock themselves in the palace and begin thinking about what to do. They hope that if they don't intervene and stay out of sight, the revolt will die down. But it doesn't turn out as they expected. The rebels, taking advantage of the emperor's absence, have already begun searching for a new ruler. They want to overthrow Justinian and replace him with Hypatius, the nephew of former Emperor Anastasius. In fact, they set up a throne in the Hippodrome, seat him on it, and declare him the new emperor of Rome. The city has, so to speak, turned into chaos. Meanwhile, Justinian is making escape plans in his palace. Even high-ranking soldiers under his command, such as Narses and Belisarius, share Justinian's view that this is the best solution. Ships are ready. The sea is open. All he has to do is leave. But Theodora has no intention of fleeing. She has not gained her power easily, and she doesn't want to lose it in a single day. Suddenly, her voice begins to echo in the palace's grand hall. For an emperor to live as a fugitive is unbearable. If you wish to save your lives, the matter is simple. There is the sea, and there are the ships at your command. But after you escape, you may prefer death to the harbor you take refuge in. As for me, royal purple is the noblest shroud. Theodora's youth had been spent in struggle, and she has no intention of giving up everything she had sacrificed for her dignity in an instant. Her words give Justinian great courage. The atmosphere of panic in the palace suddenly dissipates. An army is assembled under the leadership of General Belisarius and Commander Mundus, and they move to suppress the revolt. During the counterattacks, more than 30,000 rebels are killed. Hypatius, who had been declared emperor, is captured, and at Theodora's insistence, he is executed. This event, known as the Nika Revolt, is one of the bloodiest events in Eastern Roman history, and Justinian suppresses this revolt thanks to Theodora's determination. Thus, the suppression of a revolt also guarantees the rule of Justinian and Theodora. The people of Constantinople now understand that they cannot be overthrown. This happens thanks to Theodora's resolute and strong stance. But the revolt isn't the only event in which the empress protects the throne. By the year 540 AD, the empire is shaken this time by an infectious disease, the plague. The emperor has contracted this deadly disease and has fallen bedridden. The administration of the state is entirely in Theodora's hands. Even in such a difficult time, Theodora never lets go of governance. she manages to protect the empire until Justinian recovers. When we look at all that happened, we can say that there is a magnificent bond between this couple who rule the Eastern Roman Empire. Although we cannot ignore Theodora's intelligence, will, and self-confidence, it is an undeniable fact that the greatest supporter of the strong image she projects is Justinian. The emperor and empress overcome all difficulties together, and no matter what, they respect each other's thoughts. Although Theodora adopted the monophysite faith at a young age, Justinian is a staunch follower of Chalcedonian Christianity, which opposes it. Yet they take steps both to preserve the differences between these two beliefs and to make joint decisions within a framework of respect. But as everything has an end, so too does Theodora's reign. On June 28, 548, the empress dies. All that remains of her are the works she has done in history and a name. Her husband Justinian never wants that name to be forgotten. He continues to enact laws related to women's rights. Before the empress died, she had made him promise to protect the monophysite community, and throughout his life, he always keeps that promise. An intelligent, powerful, charismatic, and admirable woman has passed through Constantinople. A woman who managed to have a say in the governance of the Eastern Roman Empire. An actress, a courtesan, an empress, Theodora. This frivolous young girl from the slums of Constantinople defied her fate. She stood her ground when emperors would have fled. She used her power to protect the powerless. History tried to erase her, to reduce her to scandal and rumor. But her legacy endures, because Theodora proved that no matter where you come from, no matter what the world calls you, you can rewrite your story. And she absolutely succeeded in inscribing her name in history as one of the most influential women in the world. She rewrote her story in royal purple,